Fala, time, bom ou não? Hoje eu vou trazer um vídeo completamente diferente aqui. Nós temos falado sobre arquitetura, cloud, mas hoje vamos falar sobre desenvolvimento. E para isso, eu conversei com um amigo que trabalha numa empresa chamada NDepend, que é uma ferramenta, que é integrada ao Visual Studio, nos traz diversos tipos de insights. Eu não vou dar spoiler porque o vídeo vai ser exibido agora mesmo. Mas, antes de mais nada, eu queria deixar um comunicado bem simples. O vídeo é em inglês. Eu configurei o upload desse vídeo no YouTube e mencionei que a língua do vídeo é em inglês, na esperança que ele consiga colocar o close caption traduzido para português em real time. Talvez a tradução não seja tão fiel quanto ao que está sendo dito no vídeo. O áudio está um pouquinho também distante em alguns momentos, mas eu espero que você entenda, espero que você consiga ver os benefícios que a ferramenta NDepend traz para nós como desenvolvedores. Então, bora pro vídeo.
We are here with Patrick.
Patrick
Will present to us the NDepend. I'm very anxious to look this presentation, and as you know, we are trying to give you different subjects about the development cloud solution. And today here, thank you, Patrick, for this moment with you. Please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Albert. So my name is Patrick Smakia. So I'm doing .NET since the very inception, like in 2001, 2002. And I'm doing programmation since I'm 10, so it must be like 35 years ago or something like that. So yes, I really enjoy programming. So what happened is that I had a chance to write a book for Aurélie Edition at the beginning of .NET, so a book in France that was quite a success in France. So I worked really hard to write this book. It was more than 1,000 pages. And so it made me a little bit famous in the .NET sphere. At that time, all the big accounts in France, like the big bank and big automation stuff, were starting .NET. So they needed guys like me that could help to train and to audit and do stuff like that with their team. So it was a really, really nice period of my life. And what I noticed is that everywhere the problem was similar. So they ended up having a larger and larger application that became a bit like chaos. That was extremely hard to maintain. And so I thought that maybe some kind of tooling could help, because at the same time I was reading some books from Uncle Bob, so Robert Cecil Martin, that contribute to all the solid principles and clean code and clean architecture, stuff like that. So Robert really did a lot of good job to the community. And in one of his books, he provided formulas to analyze code and obtain results like this is well coded, this is well designed, this is not well designed. So I was curious about this, and I wrote a little tool that was named NDepend. So it was open source to scan the code and try to obtain these metrics and these advices. So it was good for me when I was doing some consultancy to have such a tool. The tool became popular in the community, especially taking account that at that time there were very few tools in .NET. And so I had the idea to make it professional, because so many things could be added to the tool to make it more useful and more powerful. So it started to be a business in 2007. And since then, I work hard on it, and the team is working hard on it. And so it became bigger, and there are like thousands of companies using it worldwide. And so I don't hide that it's hard for us to run after all this innovation. Microsoft is doing an awesome job in making .NET bigger and bigger and platform. So far we are still keeping up with the rhythm. but that's quite a challenge. And so since then, so I think it's like 15 years, like 15 years of work, this work in the tool. So now it's quite mature. And so during this presentation, the idea, I will introduce some NDepend feature live. Everything will be live, so we can talk about it. And so I think you're not very proficient with NDepend, right? So
sorry,
you're not an NDepend user, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is more interesting. So you can ask some questions, and that's pretty good. So so something interesting is that the community named it the Swiss Army knife for .NET developer, because year after year, many features came into the tool. So you can do many things with NDepend. I'm gonna demonstrate. So I think what's something interesting to start the presentation is to analyze .NET 6 with NDepend itself. Okay, so let's do it. So I'm starting here. I'm starting Visual NDepend. So
just to comment, this concept about NDepend, it's really nice because we are working with different tools, and to empower our development teams, it's really important. And I appreciate this definition of NDepend. I think you create a great description.
Yeah. As you can see, everything looks like a bit Visual Studio, the start page. So the idea is that because our primary target of users are proficient with Visual Studio, the idea is that they can feel at home. So it depends so far. This is a standalone. This is a Visual Studio extension, pretty much all version supported. Okay, you can use Visual NDepend side by side with Rider or with Visual Studio Code. Rider is becoming more and more appreciated in the community. So we hope to deliver a Rider extension. That's quite hard because the UI stack are not very compatible. But we are playing. We are talking with the JetBrains people who are very nice. So this is something we want to do. So you can install this person Azure DevOps extension. This is a full-fledged hub. I'm gonna show a few screenshots later. So you can install pretty much within any Visual Studio version. So you can start here. So you can start to analyze solutions, or you can analyze assemblies already compiled in a folder, or just analyze a set of assembly, or you can also compare two versions. So I will come back on this a bit later. So let's start this option. So analyze .NET assemblies that are in this folder. And copy paste. Okay, so basically this is Microsoft .NET Core App 6. Okay, and there you have all the MS code for compatibilism. We have system collection, etc. So you have 165 .NET assemblies. So let's analyze them. So I'm not going to build the report by now. Okay, so NDepend should be fast enough to take a few seconds. So I think it's around like 18,000 classes. So that can be seen as quite a large application. Okay, so basically all these warnings are about there is no PDB, because the main source of information from NDepend are the assemblies themselves. Then if you have PDB, NDepend can go back to the source code and the project code, or if you provide also the solution code. And then the more you provide NDepend with, and the more you have information, and the more it is usable. You can also import coverage data or stuff like that to make the model even richer. So what NDepend does, it was quite quick. It analyzed a large .NET application that is the entire .NET Core 6.0. So yes, there is 18,000 types. Okay, so here we have a dashboard. So we have many features here. So one of the flagship features is the NDepend graph. Okay, so it's quite powerful. You have all the .NET assemblies here. So for example, we can have a look at all the namespaces. And here we can zoom in, so we can see all the dependency. Okay, so the color are changing when I'm zooming, because here there is a name. I'm gonna put this here. So if I hover a box, it becomes orange, and the users are in green, and the used are in blue. And if there is a mutual dependency like here, it's in red. Okay, so there is a color scheme to try to understand something. So here it's quite big. So what I propose is that I'm gonna restrain this graph. So there are many tools to. So I'm gonna type collections. So basically, it's gonna match. Now it's matching everything with collection edit, collection generics. Okay, so I can just keep those, and now I obtain a much simpler graph. And here I have all the collection stuff in the .NET core 6, .NET 6. Okay, so that's pretty quick. Now just to, why I'm doing this, just to show that if you have a very large application that is hard to understand, if you want to isolate concepts like customer or stuff like that, it's quite easy. Okay. So
but for me, it's really nice because it's really fast to analyze 165 files, and also to use this interactive way to understand your code. This is really nice way to improve our development.
The idea is that one thing that makes NDepend different, that is really fast. It can really absorb tons of code, thousands of interfaces. Like we tested until like 200,000 classes analyzed at the same time. So we really make it faster because the idea, as I explained before, the primary target was large application. One small application that you want to live in a greenfield with it, and have not so much a problem. But I saw so many large applications that became chaotic. But I think such a tool can help. So here, for example, you can expand. Okay, you can search, for example, for dictionary. So dictionary implementation. So we have several, let's go here, for example. So I can select dictionary, for example. Now I can just keep dependent. So I can keep stuff used or using dictionary. So instantly I can have all those guys. Or I can have the calling. So what is dictionary calling with a depth of 2? Okay, so here I can see it's quite a bit messy because this is the .NET framework itself. But for example, it relies on stuff like assembly load context. Will be interesting to analyze how can I reach here. Encoding, I mean, tons of types are coming here. So that's quite interesting. But this is the .NET framework. This is certainly not the typical application developer are using. So I propose we go back to something more that looks like more what people are using. It's a large ASP.NET Core application, which is quite famous, which is called No-Op Commerce. Okay, and so here this is quite a large application, entirely open source. So you can download it if you want to learn some ASP.NET Core stuff, or just want to reuse some of it. So I propose to analyze this and see what can be done with NDepend on such application. So here I'm in Visual Studio. I have NDepend, I have Rich Sharper, so it's Visual Studio 2022, the brand new one, which is much better. So I'm gonna attach a new NDepend project, okay, to the actual solution of No-Op Commerce. So here NDepend is smart enough to isolate. I don't want to analyze the test project. Of course you can, but there is a filter. Okay, here I can analyze them. Okay, but at this point I don't want. So I can build a report. Okay, let's build a report and have a look at what NDepend do. So there are only 21 projects to analyze. Okay, it's gonna take a bit more time. because the report is built under the hood. Okay, so report has been built. Let's put it here. So here a report has been built in less than a minute. So this report is telling me many stuff. So first, the size of the application. So of course, it's much smaller than the .NET framework, .NET Core 6. So there are 2,600 types, 80,000 lines of code. NDepend found like 3,000 issues with it. Okay. There is the technical debt stuff. So NDepend estimate that there are 9% of debt in it, which I will detail later. So there are a few diagrams here. So the graph is so earlier, but the time of course, there is a dependency matrix I will detail later, a heat map with the complex methods, okay? And then another interesting graph about this one gonna be hard to, the NOP core can be hard to maintain. Okay, so there are just a few diagrams, I will go with it later. So there are some quality gates here, I will explain later, and then there are all my issues sorted by group by rules. Okay, so here I have all my rule stuff. So typically, I guess avoid method with too many parameters. So obviously here I have tons of parameters, 56 parameters, which is not good. So this is a report. So you can use this report in your CI/CD pipeline. Okay, there is also the Azure DevOps Hub, and you can also use NDepend inside Visual Studio. Just to explain the product chain here. So you have developer licensing. So basically Visual NDepend, Visual Studio extension. You have the build machine stuff to produce reports. Okay, like TeamCity, Jenkins stuff. And then you have the Azure DevOps extension. And we are working on a GitHub action that should be delivered by October, I hope. So it will be quite interesting to have a GitHub in the process because now everyone is using it. So I hope we're gonna release it in very soon. So that was the report. So let's go to Visual Studio. So here again, I have all my stuff. Again, I can see. Let me have a look at the application map. Okay, so that's quite clean. So I have all my my projects. The size of the box are proportional to the size of each project in terms of line of code. Okay, so that's a good indicator. We can see that NOP Web is using all those ones and is used by a few smaller ones. Payment solution, okay, or tax solution or stuff like that. Okay, so that's quite a complete application. So that's interesting to have such a graph to really understand an application and try to make for example, to ramp up if you are a new developer and trying to understand, that can be really useful. So the real backbone of NDepend is what we call CQ link, so code query link. So code query link, maybe you use LinkPad. You know about LinkPad? The tool?
Yes, LinkPad.
It's like LinkPad, but instead of querying a database or an XML file or whatever, or a JSON file, here you can query your code base. So for example, I can query application method. So those are my methods. Contrast to third-party methods that are used by my application. So for example, I want where.n.cyclomatic complexity. Let's make it be quite complex enough. Okay, so basically the cyclomatic complexity is the number of paths you can have in a method, the number of for, the number of loop, the number of if, the number of else, switch, case, etc. So the more you have those and the more you are complex. Okay. And select, for example, new M. and dot set row active. Okay. So here, see that 52 methods are matched. I'm always juggling with with all of this. So here I can see 52 methods are matched. So I can group them by type. Okay. So for example, is address valid? Okay, I can see this is quite. So this is quite a complex method. Maybe we should think about how to make it easier. I can imagine that this method having a complexity of 43, it means that if you want to test it properly, you need around like 40 tests. Okay, you need to have like 40 input, address input, and you want to test this, test this, test this, test this, etc. So you want to. So that's quite a complex method, and maybe you can make it more easier. Maybe make a little class to validate it. Or maybe it's okay like that as well. I'm not sure. Someone would have to think about it. But what's interesting is that you can match this kind of method very quickly just with a little query. And what's interesting is that actually, if you put a prefix, which is so this is pure C# link against the NDepend model. Okay. So the NDepend model pre-compute a lot of stuff, like for example, the complexity, which is if you were using Roslyn, for example, you would have to write your own procedure for complexity, for example, which is not here. So there are many stuff like that already done provided by NDepend. And what's interesting is that this query system is used everywhere in the product. And here is a small prefix that indicates that this is not just a query, but a whole. So here, basically, everything matched is an issue, okay? An issue in the sense of NDepend. So something to fix or maybe to suppress, okay? Or you can modify the rule to avoid maybe there are some false positives. Maybe this is a false positive. Maybe you want to add something like a nesting depth. So you want to really go high into the nesting to make sure this is really dirty, and you want to fix that. So you can save this rule. So NDepend has made like 200 rules per default about code smell. Okay, like tips too big, twist too many methods, etc. Okay, so as you can see, this is quite fast. This is on this large application, you can have a very quick overview of everything. So code smell regression. So NDepend, we're gonna just illustrate now. What makes NDepend quite unique is that you can compare against the baseline. And why this is useful? Because all those 200 rules, what they did, if I go back to the dashboard, okay, the dashboard that is actually here also, this is replicated in the reports. So if I go back to the dashboard, I can see that I have 3,000 issues. If I click on this, I can have all my issues grouped per rules. Okay, and the problem with this is that this is a large legacy, and nobody will stop working on it to fix everything. Okay, so you have a tsunami of issues, and that's a big problem. So how do you want to work with that? So I will explain later more about the rule you can have with NDepend, but I want to focus on this now. Is that what you want is to have high code quality on the new code and the refactor code. And this is quite useful to have a baseline to compare against. So NDepend can know what issue is new, what issue is fixed, and then you can focus on the right stuff. So let's make a demo with it. I'll prepare something here. So inside this country services class, I'm going to uncomment some code. I have a base class, okay, and I have a derived class, and that's very dirty because the base class is using the derived class. Okay, this is not very nice. And also, I made very dirty methods. And again, this is quite a complex method. Certainly, you don't want to have this kind of method into your code base. Okay, So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna compile this one. Okay. So now suppose my developer just did something like this. Okay, so it's taking time to compile. So this is, by the way, this is ReSharper compilation, which is quite a cool tool. Okay, now let's make, so I run a second analysis. So the first one was made at 3:22, and now we are 11 minutes later. So now it's compared. There is a little glitch here, no problem. So now we are comparing what we did now with what we did earlier. Well, basically, there are two snapshots. The snapshot before the baseline and the current snapshot. So NDepend tells me that I did two types. Okay, well done. Indeed, I did. So basically, everything here is clickable. Okay, and when you click it, your code query is generated for you. So the idea with NDepend is that a lot of code query is generated for you. So you can query every aspect of your code base. So I have 57 extra line of code. Of course, those are here. Okay, but the most interesting thing is that I have 5 new issues. So let's have a look at this issue. So avoid method too big, too complex. Okay, typically a very dirty method is too big and too complex. Avoid method fully commenting. Again, this one has 0, it's complex and has 0 comment. So this is relevant. Then there is a rule in the customized regression category. So the name of this rule is from now. So we suppose there is a point in time NDepend gets adopted in the team, and we say from now, all methods added should respect basic quality principles. Okay, and again, same very dirty method is not respecting this one. Then I have this one, potentially dead methods, which tells me that the method is not used. And here I can see ReSharper is already telling me that because the method is great. So basically I can comment it or delete it, and no code will break with that. The method is dead. Okay. And finally, there are another rules violated, which is base class should not use derivative. And here it tells me that base class is using a derivative. Okay. And I like to have a look at the code of this rule. So basically, every rule, the default rule, and as you can see, it's quite easy to write your own rule, has a two sides. There is the description. Okay, so here we explain why the base class should not use derivative, because then you are gonna break the open close principle. Okay, and then we explain how to fix the thing. But if I go to the source code, actually there is the logic and there is all the description stuff in comment. Okay.
So in this case, it is possible for us to create our own rule.
Oh yeah, like I did earlier actually. This was a mini rule. I didn't say.
Yeah, this like that.
Yeah, this is a mini rule. And so yeah, it's very easy to write your own rule. Okay, and I like this one because actually just this little thing, I like base class dot derivative types dot used by base class. This is the core of the rule. I like this little piece of code is quite readable and interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah. So here we found this is what NDepend is a bit different than what you can have with ReSharper or mostly is that you can focus on the new dirty stuff. Okay, and this is interesting because now instead of focusing on 3,000 problems, I have only 5 problems. Okay, and also there is this metaphor of technical debt where NDepend can help quantify the technical debt. So basically, the technical debt, as a coin before, this is a metaphor like financial debt. So typically, you do things quick and dirty. Everyone is doing like this. And then you come to the point that the design is totally routine, and you have to stop the development and improve the stuff. So the idea is that you introduce some technical debt into your code, and it slows you down, and at the point you have to stop things and make the design better. Okay, so NDepend is trying to estimate this technical debt in terms of percentage. So the percentage is the amount of technical debt, which here it's like 207 development day, so 8 hours day. Okay, and the estimated development effort, which is 2200 day. So this is NDepend has some is trying to infer this kind of, to estimate this kind of number from your application, because it knows everything about your application. So it's scanning the number of lines of code, the code generated, and stuff like that. Typically, it works pretty well. We have a lot of users that are pretty happy with the estimation. So here you have to compare 207 days against 2200 days, and it gives you 9% technical debt. Okay? And what's interesting is that here, so this is interesting for the manager, but following the trending is even more interesting, because here we can see that we added 2 hours and 4 minutes of technical debt. So the idea is that to fix this new code, to fix this new stuff, the NDepend rule are estimating that it will take you like 2 hours. Okay, so if you're the manager, you can say, hey, there is a problem here, and I can try to allocate 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever development work to try to fix, because now I want to live in the green, and I don't want to see this kind of stuff in my code. And so that can be a great help for the team to try to improve, especially taking account that a lot of rules are about new classes, new method, but also refactor classes and refactor method. So the idea is that if you have to touch a class, then you have to improve it. Something I didn't show, but you can improve so import code coverage. And then you want to make sure that the class method is 100% tested, because you have this code coverage stuff. Okay, you have many rules. So here I didn't import code coverage, but you have many rules about code should be tested. So typically this rule will split a lot of issues and technical debt, because typically most of the code should be tested. The new method should be tested, okay, or method refactor should be tested, etc. Tips almost 100% tested, should be 100% tested, etc. So this is interesting that with NDepend you can also follow you can mix everything. You can mix the trending, because you know about the baseline. You can mix the quality, the code masters. You can mix the testing, the code coverage, the object-oriented design, like having interface to build. Okay, you don't want to have, you need to follow the interface segregation principle. We have the DSO base class should reduce derivative. No descendant should be sealed, etc., etc. We have some design rules, some architecture rules, API breaking change rule, which means, for example, if something was public but is not public anymore, so maybe your user cannot use it anymore. So this is bad if you are publishing an API. Code coverage, we detail, dead code we saw. This is the code that can be commented or deleted because it's not used. A few security issues, rules, some visibility rules about like this public stuff could be private or internal or whatever. You can adjust the encapsulation. Some immutability stuff. So that's quite interesting, especially now with the new record stuff. Like typically you want to work with a lot of immutable object whose state cannot be changed at time. A few naming conventions, which are very easy to write. For example, interface name should begin with an I. So here you want to match interface where the first character of the name is not an I. So all those extra code is to avoid false positive. Okay. So for example, so now that's pretty old, but if you have visible attribute interface that they don't abide by this kind of stuff, or if the interface is nested, then you have to do a little bit of thing to make sure that the first character is I. Here, the date we estimate is just 5 minutes to fix. With a refactoring tool, you can quickly change the interface name and validate. Okay, and then you have also severity stuff on for each issue. But here, what's interesting is that some of the rules have a real formula. So, for example, if I go to the code should be tested, here we compute a lot of factors, and at the end we mix everything to try to have some realistic effort to write test in terms of amount of time required to write test for untested method. Okay. Or the rules try to be smart with smart estimation. I think it's working not too bad. So you have more about like source file organization. For example, you don't want to have many types in single source file, which is bad. You have some .NET framework usage, okay, how you should do system collection, threading, XML, etc. And then a few API usage. So far we only use it for Unity, but of course we'll add more rules for that. And finally, you have this group, which is interesting, is that just my code. The idea is to write some code query to try to match what is not your code, typically what is generated code, generated by my ASP.NET Core stuff, and you know. So typically you don't want to have some issues on generated code, or like here this is generated by the C# compiler. Okay, so typically I don't want to have issues on all those stuff. Okay, so NDepend can avoid that, and of course you can make this query richer if you have some special stuff to generate your code. Okay, so the idea is to really avoid the amount of false positive, to really focus on what matters. Okay, so just a quick point to compare NDepend with Roslyn and Sharper and SonarCube and Roslinator and everything. So this is a bit different, as you can see. First, it's not based on Roslyn. So the advantage is that it's really fast, but the idea is that you don't have everything. So typically with Roslyn, you can match stuff like potential bugs, misuse of standard API, like source code formatting, okay, proper usage of C# construct, okay, so identifier, like API documentation, improved performance, globalization. So all those stuff typically can be fixed with one or two line change. So typically the tool will propose you a fix, and you can apply the fix automatically, which is awesome. And the kind of stuff we try to detect with NDepend is a bit different. This is more about all the architecture stuff, like poorly tested classes, chaotic project, like spaghetti project, spaghetti code. Okay, we can too complex code. Okay, we can do some code audit. We can monitor some training. Okay, misuse of object principle, violation of solid principle. Okay, broken API, stuff like that. So it's a bit more high level in the kind of issue it tries to find. So for example, one cool rule is about architecture. So typically, the rule avoid namespace dependency cycle will try to find a spaghetti code inside your application. So I remind that we are on Node Commerce here.
Important feature, this one.
Yes, because then it not only can show you. So here, for example, he found that there are 11 assemblies that contains some kind of dependency cycle. So the bigger one is this one. So I right click and I export to the graph. So I'm changing the group by, so I don't want anymore to go by that and that. And I don't want to group also cluster to have a better view here. So here into this large assemblies that is not services vendor, basically everything depends on everything. So certainly the code is fully functional and fast and tested or whatever, but it can be hard to maintain such code. Okay, typically you want to have some interface and then some higher level code with less dependence. So with NDepend, you can really easily find this kind of code. So if I want to see, for example, between common and other, what's in the middle, I can just double click. And I can see here that PDF services is using other services. But then on the other hand, the other are using the ePDF services, etc. So typically I have some blue that is using some green, and here I have some green that is using some blue. So this is why I have this dependency. So certainly, and here is telling me that this dependency should be broken. Okay, and if I break this dependency, then I will break this mutual dependency. And if you break all the mutual dependency, then certainly you can achieve some more layered code. Okay, with high level, low level, etc. So this is heavy refactoring. This is a lot of work. But if you live in a chaotic code base, there is not many alternatives if you want to improve stuff. So here NDepend can help as well with another rule, which is pretty cool, which is avoid namespace mutually dependent. And here it tells you that this class, this method shouldn't use this class, this method. So here every row is an issue and it's also an advice. Okay, so typically eWeb context shouldn't use language because NOPCO shouldn't use NOPCO domain localization. So NDepend estimate that NOPCO is lower level than domain localization, so obviously you shouldn't use it. So you have a lot of advice to, and also there is some depth estimation. So here to try to improve stuff, maybe 3 days and 7 hours. So this is not so much. It would be worth to try it and see if it helps.
Yeah, this feature I like it a lot. That should use namespace because I was working in different source code, and there is different methods to make the same thing, but we have some namespace to do as this next example, right? Localization things. We don't need to implement it again. And it is important to have this reference described by NDepend. I like a lot this functionality.
Yeah, that's quite useful. So the idea is that you have all this concern in your code base, the evolution, the testing, the architecture, and the smaller scale stuff that can be pinpointed by NDepend, quantified by NDepend. The big difference also with Regine and ReSharper is that you don't have a button. You don't have, I cannot right click and say fix it because that really requires human brain. Maybe later artificial intelligence will be smart enough, but we are definitely not yet not there yet. Then the kind of issues spotted by NDepend are more higher level, and it's more about the team. Do we want to improve the code base or improve the work we are currently doing? So this is more the kind of stuff you can get with NDepend. Okay. So there is one final stuff very important I wanted to show. It's about the quality gate. So what is a quality gate? So by now we have a tool that gives you issues, that gives you new issues in the baseline, that gives you estimations. So you have a lot of tsunami of information, but it can be hard to action this in the sense am I okay with the quality? How much effort should I do? Or, I mean, what you need now is some kind of criterion that will tell you are good or you are not good. So, for example, such a criterion should be, I want the new code to be 90% covered, for example. Are we there? Or I don't want new blocking issue. Okay. So what we did, we prepared here there are like dozens of such a criterion, and they are named quality gates. And the output of quality gate is not an issue like a rule, but it's a state in the pass, warn, fail values. So typically, when it's green, it pass. When it's here, it's warning, and here it's fail. It fails. And then when it fails, it means that you cannot release. You really have to focus on this one. Okay. So what's interesting is that again, this is code query link. So it's very easy to write your own. Okay. For example, like this one, percentage debt. Fail if value greater than 30%, or if value greater than 20%. Okay, then I want to, I call it effort to develop, and then I compute the debt, and then I do a little math to get the percentage. Okay, so all this is really read in, you can edit it very, very easily. So you can use the standard quality gate. And if you want to adjust anything like threshold, it's as easy as that. Okay, you just have to edit your Photoshop, and of course after click the save. So this is why a quality gate is very important, because they help to fail the build. Okay, and then that's interesting because when the build fails, then everyone focus on this. So the idea is that it doesn't fail every time. The idea is that to have quality gates smart enough to fake the build really when necessary, because some tests are missing or a developer really made something bad. Okay, so this is how NDepend works. So you have this extension, the VHA extension, or the standalone, or you can use the NDepend console to generate the reports. And of course, the console is putting a non-zero exit code if some quality gates are failing. So this way you can fail the build when you invoke it. You have the Azure DevOps here, which is here. Let me have a look at the doc. So here the DevOps, again, you have a browser. So the Azure DevOps is quite, it's not a thing. You can see some screenshots. You have some nice stuff, and it's quite sophisticated. You can click pretty much everything to have a look at quality gates, and the issue, the depths, the rules. Something I didn't explain yet is the trending. So the trending, basically, you have some more code queries that would put a scalar. And for example, if I want to plot the new issue since baseline, I just need this small code query, and then in the dashboard and in the report, I can start plotting some. And this time I can see my trending. Do I get new issue, less issue, etc. So you have many trend metrics by default, like 74 trend metrics by default, and it's very easy to write your own. You just need to put a little command first, and then write your query. Okay, so you have more screenshots, you have some perspective, okay, some quality gates, etc., etc. And soon, as I said, I hope in October, we'll have the GitHub action that will generate some reporting that will fail the build. And also it will be quite interesting because then the team can share the snapshot produced by the GitHub action. And that will be quite useful to make sure everyone is on the same page inside their daily tooling. And yeah, so I think, yes, I'm not sure if you have questions about what I presented.
And not so questions, some questions, but I enjoy a lot the presentation. For me as a developer, it's really nice to have this, how can I say, way to understand the code, to understand also, okay, I have this issue, but to solve it, I have this amount of days or hours to solve it. It's an important information to discuss with our manager, because most of the time we are working on develop new features, fix some bugs, but also we don't have information enough to understand what kind of problems or depths that we are input on our code doing our daily basis. And okay, we have this issue, but how long we need to spend to solve it? And there is this estimation from NDepend, it's good. And I was looking the really nice dashboard or graphic to relate it to the assemblies, dependency of the assemblies. This is good to help new buys to work with us to understand the context, to understand the code, the libraries, the dependencies, and so on. It's a complete tool for all of us, all of the developers.
Remember when I started working as a junior, I was extremely frustrated to come in a large code base with many guys, and you are gonna work on this class to do that, but okay, where it's coming, where? I mean, that was quite hard to have a 100-foot view of the application. So maybe it was quite a trauma that also led me to develop, to start to develop such a tool to try to understand what's happening. But it's not only junior, but anyone working on a sufficiently large enough code base don't remember what they did 3 years, 4 years backward. So if you have to go back again to something, you can have a look at the code, you can have a look at the dependency and see how things were done. And also you can, as you can see, you can write also your own rule. So the own rules are quite interesting if you want to specify. So for example, if you have some POCO, some plain old scalar object, you can easily write a rule to make sure that it's not going to use the database or the user interface or whatever. I mean, you can fix some kind of constraints very easily because what I didn't make explicit is that the code rule are just textual stuff. This is just text, everything, nothing is compiled in the NDepend. The only time it's compiled is here. Is when I edit it or when I open my solution or when I run my analysis. And this is important because with the Roslyn analyzer, Roslyn rule, etc., you have to take the time to version, to compile, to store, with NDepend, the engine is quite fast and it just compiles, it's just text, which makes it very practical to change anything, to customize everything, and so to write new rules and stuff like that. So that's why I like to see NDepend as complementary with all the great feeling we already got with all the Roslyn stuff and the Bishop and everything, because there is all this possibility to do.
Yeah, the way to create this rule is so nice. And also for me, the quality gate to create some composition of rules, and we can build our rule from ourselves and then create different type of validations in our code and to compose our quality gate. And this is important not just for during the development time, but also when you integrate all the codes and use the approach that you showed by Azure DevOps to run these validations and analysis on the pipeline. It's really good because now this is the vision for you, for your code now in your machine. But imagine I'm also develop something on my machine, and as soon as we integrate these things together, what is the best fit or the quality gate related for this integrated code? I don't know, but yeah, I like it a lot, this approach to create our rules. It's so easy and also it's readable for me as a developer.
there are a lot of facilities. As I explained, NDepend can generate a lot of. The idea is that you don't spend too much time on writing this kind of thing. So, for example, if I don't want this dependency, I can just right click and I can generate a code rule that warns if this dependency exists. And then I have such a code rule. So for n in space where n is using a service common, and the name of the user is order, which is here. Okay, select new and NDepend. So you can really quickly, there is even a search by criteria that is really a code query. For example, I can type order here. So here I am looking for some type and then exact name. Yes. Why much cases? So here I have all the types named order. Okay, and what's interesting is that the query has been generating for me. But if I want, I can search type, for example, by complexity. So I want to have the most complex type. So this one seems to be. So it gets all the entity stuff. So maybe this one could be, say, I'm not my code, I'm not sure. But this is quite a lot of code, a lot of complex code. So the idea is that here, again, the code query I typed earlier can be very easily generated for you. And there are many ways to see by change, for example. So what has been changed? So we know what has been changed is derivative types and base class. But if I want to go to the method level, then I have more. I have also the derivative methods and I have all this stuff. So all those have been changed, and then NDepend can help me. And also NDepend can save the snapshot of the source code, and I can diff the source. And what's interesting is that here I didn't use a GitHub magic or whatever. NDepend just zipped my source where everything was commented earlier, and then I can just see the change. So you don't need to have any complex stuff. NDepend will track everything for you, and when you need to visualize what has been changed or everything, it's quite quick.
It's really nice. I'm a little bit curious where these rules are stored in the NDepend.
Yes, sorry, I didn't make it explicit, but actually you have ND approach. So when you attach the project or when you create a project, a new XML file is created for you, which is NDapproach extension. So here you remember I attached the NDapproach to the solution. So here the NDapproach is in the same directory, the same folder as the solution. So typically you can generate the NDapproach. So you have a lot of settings. So for example, for the depth, if you want, you can ask for $. Instead of having time, you can have $. If you say that the average cost of a man hour of development is that much $, so it's very easy. So you can customize a lot of stuff, and all those rules and queries are stored in the NDapproach. But we can also create some rule file and then put some rule in it. So this way, several projects can. So typically, large organization that use NDepend are doing like this. They are creating projects and all this. Also, I didn't highlight, but NDepend has an API. So if you have some of our users have hundreds of solutions or thousands, so they can also automate the processing, even during the CI/CD, during the pipeline. They can even create projects on the fly or whatever. So because there is an API for that, so you can automate pretty much everything. And it's quite easy to use the API.
Really nice. Yeah, really nice. I like it a lot, the tool. And yeah, I have no more questions. As a developer, I was enjoying to see different tools, features for me to understand the code to, oh, I have to pay this debt so fast or not, maybe.
There is gamification, yes. You can end up digging a game like, hey, today I fixed like 15 minutes, I fixed like 2 hours, and then you can see your colleague. But the numbers, there are estimations, but the trending doesn't lie. So maybe you spend 1 hour, but you fix 2 hours of technical debt. It's good. But the idea is that you go in the right direction. The idea is on the dashboard and also on the putting stuff so on these numbers that are compared against the baseline and also the trending. You can start, for example, percentage coverage and percentage depth. You want to have a curve like that to coverage that goes higher and the depth that goes lower. So yeah, the trending is quite interesting to follow if you want to improve your design.
Yeah. It's important to have this real-time feedbacks for all of developers, because we always have been talked about test. It's okay. We can have tests, we can cover the code, but this is not true if you have some complexity on your code, different issues. Maybe you have tests, but also you have issues and you have to improve your code all the time. And as soon as we have this real-time feedback, it's good for me as an architect, for me as a developer, and also to talk with our teams to be aware about the problems that we are input on the code during our daily basis. It's really nice to.
And also not just architect or developer, but also consultant.
Yeah.
When a consultant came to a new code base, with such a tool, if you know, we have a lot of how I can say, like consultant very proficient, and we are working closely with them that they have their independent license. They use it on this client, this client, so they can really show the client what is good or what is getting good or not.
Yeah. You mentioned contractors, right?
Yes.
Work for a little bit time in our project, needs to understand and needs to understand fast, do the things, but it's not necessary to put some issues because that NDepend help us to work better. Really nice, really nice, Patrick. I love it. Yeah, do you have some conclusions?
No, the website is just NDepend.com. There is a trial. So if anyone wants to use it, there is a 14-day trial. I didn't explain that. So all the reporting stuff, the analysis stuff, it works everywhere. Okay, by now it's .NET 5. We're running right to .NET 6 very soon, also in the next version. So it works on every operating system. All the UI stuff shown into Visual Studio or Visual NDepend, it's only in Windows so far. Okay, we have long-term plan to change the UI. We don't know by now which UI framework will be used, MAUI or whatever. I'm not sure. So it will come in the long run. But yes, a lot of developers and architects are now migrating to Mac, because there is Azure for Mac and there is Regra, etc. So, but we also have a lot of users working on Windows. So we are aware that being on Mac is important, especially the UI. So this will come later. But at least all the pipeline stuff that can run on Linux and Mac as well. So this was our last year priority. It was quite fun. It was quite fun to migrate a lot of stuff to .NET 5 and then .NET 6. But the UI is something different because there is no WPF and WinForm support for the operating system, so it will come later. So here I explain like the pricing system, developer, build machine, Azure DevOps, and soon there will be GitHub here. You have tons of documentation. You have several smaller videos. There are several small, like 5 minutes YouTube video. Okay, about getting started, the graph, query, rules, etc. Pretty much everything I covered, TeamCity, okay, Azure DevOps, etc. So you can refer to the video, or you can refer also to the documentation. and then like analysis, reporting. There are some sample reports, so you have like reports on OCAD, no commerce, etc., etc. You have the trending charts, so the plotting stuff. You can see we plotted for our sales on NDepend, so you can obtain easily this kind of charts for the size of your code, for the code coverage of your code, etc., the number of issues, the rule violation, and whatever you want. Okay, so this is pretty easy to generate some stuff, some trending stuff like that with NDepend. Yeah, so just go to ndepend.com and try to work with it for if you are in a large code base, a bit chaotic, just try it and see what the tool can tell you.
Really nice. Thank you so much for sharing this tool. I'm going to share this link also in the video description on YouTube. Feel free to access it. If you have some question, please comment on this video, and I will be happy to read Patrick with your question and answer it. Okay? Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Patrick.
Então, time, gostou? É um vídeo um pouco longo, eu sei, mas tem muito insight interessante para quem gosta de desenvolvimento. Se você quer saber mais sobre o NDepend, claro, o Patrick deixou alguns insights no vídeo, mas eu vou colocar no link da descrição desse vídeo um formulário onde você pode colocar o seu nome, adicionar os seus comentários e se você deseja ou não receber um contato do Patrick, do NDepend. E aí eu vou encaminhar esse contato para o Patrick. Tudo bem? Espero que vocês tenham gostado do vídeo. Se vocês não estão inscritos no canal, por favor, se inscreva, ative o sininho, dê um like nesse vídeo, compartilhe para que esse vídeo alcance mais e mais pessoas e espero vocês na próxima semana aqui no Code FC. Até mais.